I look like a harlot. Hello everyone, and welcome to the mid-year freakout tag. So, the mid-year freakout tag was a tag created by some book bloggers. I will put their names up on the screen because I don't actually remember who it is. And it was created when those tags were really popular, when you would actually say at the end of the video, I tagged so-and-so creator, so then it would snowball and then more creators would make it. I just thought I would do it. I haven't been tagged. Nobody's told me to do it. I just thought it would be fun. It's also supposed to be a reflection on the books you have read and the ones that you are going to be reading throughout the rest of the year. Technically, since it's a mid-year freakout tag, you're supposed to do it like at the beginning of June, but I always feel like July is the mid-year for me, and I think that's because my birthday's in July. I thought it would be cool to be stuck between these little book stacks, but now I'm like crammed in here. I was looking at my Storygraph list of all of the books that I've read so far. I have at this point read, I believe, 35 books, maybe 36. I don't remember, which is pretty on par with what I read last year, even though I feel like I read more books at this point last year. I'm not trying to get to 100 books. I'm not trying to get to like any specific number. I have been in horrible reading slumps, and I have not enjoyed a lot of the books that I've read. Like, yes, I've had some pretty good 5-star books, but a lot of the books I've read I haven't had thoughts about. I've not made many rant reviews. I've not made any like, this book is amazing and you have to go read it kind of content. I've just been like, yep, I read this book. I enjoyed reading it. That's it. And at this point in the year, almost every content creator, book content creator that I've enjoyed ever has talked about how this year is just not it. Reading slumps, not finding books that you enjoy, not enjoying books as much as you feel like you should have, that kind of thing. I don't know if it's like book content burnout or if it's just a bad year all around, but almost everyone seems to have this through line of like, this year hasn't been great so far. And I am no exception. It's not been the best year so far. I feel like I haven't made much content around the books I read. I feel like when I am making content, it's not a book review. So I don't know. That being said, let's get started with question number 1. Best book you've read so far. And I'm going to have to go with Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. I read Scythe last year and I enjoyed it. I think it's a wonderful start of a series. I think the world building was great. It really started a conversation of some amazing thought experiments and philosophical debates. I was a bit worried because usually with trilogies, the second book is just a bridge to the third book. A lot of times, the second book doesn't have its own story. The second book doesn't have like a lot of status quo changes because people are trying to save all of the conflict and the big battles and answers to big questions for the last book. So I was hesitant when going into Thunderhead. Thunderhead is actually probably my favorite book of the series. I don't know if maybe I just like the characters Citra and Rowan and they have the most well, not even that. They don't even have that many interactions, but they have a lot of interactions in Thunderhead that are sweet and I like them. But Thunderhead is just my favorite book of the series. I think it did such shocking and amazing things with the story and decided to have like beautiful and complex relationships and status quos within that relationship and status quos within the hierarchy of the book and the community. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but I really like Thunderhead. I like The Toll just as much. The Toll is also an amazing book, but Thunderhead was just my favorite. There was something about it that just, I gobbled it up. And The Toll is a lot longer, so I think it dragged a little bit, or it had a lot of information, so that might have been why I liked Thunderhead a bit more. It was a bit more cohesive. But I don't know, Thunderhead was just really good, and especially for a second book of a trilogy, it did amazing. It delivered on what it said it was going to do. That being said, I don't think Thunderhead is the best sequel I read. Well, it is the best sequel. Maybe, I don't know. I tried not to repeat answers. The best sequel I've read this year is going to be Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. I was super excited for this book because Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies was probably my favorite read of the year last year. Everyone says that. Everyone who's read that book is like, it was my favorite read. It was my favorite romance. I love that book wholeheartedly. It was so cute and sweet and adorable and amazing. Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands came out really early in the year. I think it came out in January, which at that point I had not had great luck with sequels. Harrow the Ninth, Nona the Ninth, The Atlas Complex, The Atlas Paradox, all of those continuations of books I had started the year prior did not hit for me. I didn't like them as much. They were good, like Nona and Harrow the Ninth were very good. I just didn't like them as much as Gideon the Ninth. And then we're not even going to get into the Atlas trilogy. But I was very, very hesitant to enjoy Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands because I was so worried it was going to be a disappointment. And it was amazing, and it held up, and it continued the story in not a unique way, but in an interesting way where I wasn't like, oh, they're just doing the same thing over and over again, but there were new advances, and it was still the same charm, and this and that, and I loved it. So question number 3 is new release you haven't read yet. I don't really pay attention to new releases. If there is like a video on TikTok specifically that advertises a new release, or if I know a sequel is coming out the next year or whatever, those are really the only new releases that I keep track of. And one that came out recently is, what is it? There Are Three Women and Four Men by Jaden Payne. I have not been able to find this, but I also don't go to like traditional bookstores. I try and go to like used bookstores most of the time. I could potentially find this if I just looked correctly, but There Are Three Women and Four Men by Jaden Payne is supposed to be a murder mystery. The main character is an exclusive and reclusive art gallery person, and his wife was murdered 10 years ago, and he finally decides to reopen the art gallery and invite, I guess, the 6 or 7 most likely suspects, and they're all trapped in this art gallery as he tries to figure out who killed his wife. And I think that was a very interesting concept, and I'm a big fan of mystery thrillers, especially like whodunit mystery thrillers, so I thought that was very interesting from the get-go, and I know it has come out. Anyway, I'm super excited about that one. I'm on the look for it. The 4th question is most anticipated release of 2024, and this one I don't actually have an answer for. I don't keep up with releases, so I don't actually have an idea of like a sequel or somebody else's book that seemed interesting that hasn't come out yet. I don't know. Is Electra the Ninth coming out this year? Okay, so they don't know if Electra the Ninth is going to be released this year, but there's whispers that it will be, or maybe next year. So I actually really don't know. Question number 5 is biggest disappointment you've read so far, and that will have to go to Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I try not to put expectations on books, but Night Bitch was one of those books I got from a TikTok recommendation where it was like, this is weird books for weird girlies, and like, you've never read a book like this before, and that's true. I haven't. But it's supposed to be about a woman. She put her career on hold to become a mother, and then it starts to go slowly insane. And her insanity is that she believes she's turning into a dog, and then she uses that to become artistic, and then have her like artistic creativity reignited or whatever. I think this is my biggest disappointment, mainly because it's more of a recent read, but also I put a hold on this on Libby. And if you're familiar with Libby, you know that holds sometimes take a while, because apparently there's this whole like process that libraries have to go through, and it's not just like a PDF that they lend out to you, like it's a whole like thing. So I put it on hold when I started using Libby. So I think even like either early in January this year or like last year, I can't even remember, but I waited for months for Night Bitch. I waited patiently. I read my other books. I didn't look at any reviews or other people talking about Night Bitch. I wanted to read that and enjoy it by myself, and I did not like it. I didn't like it. And this is what I mean. I try not to put expectations on books. I try not to put them on a pedestal, but I was like, you know, there's a long wait for it. Most people are probably enjoying it because, you know, they're holding on to their copy. They're giving it a read. And when I tell you I skimmed so much, honestly, I should have DNF'd. I should have DNF'd because I was just going, what, I was just swiping through the pages. I was not actually ingesting any of it, because you don't have to, because the first half of the book is that it's just repetitive. She's just being like, I'm lonely and sad, but I also think I'm better than the other moms in the mom group, and so I'm not going to interact with them, and so I'm lonely and sad, and my son is annoying, and then I'm turning into a dog. And then she has this whole like art gallery exhibit thing where it's like performance art, and I can't even tell you what the performance art was, because it was something about like being a creative mother, and I get it. I'm not a mother, so I don't understand like that aspect of it, and maybe somebody who is a mother resonated with it, but I did not, and I didn't need to sit through that, and I'm very disappointed that it was not weird books for weird girlies, but it was boring books for boring girlies. On the flip side, question number 6 is biggest surprise. For me, that was a more recent read as well, called Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. Tell Me I'm Worthless is not a genre that I go into a lot. I like mystery thrillers, and I like things with horror and paranormal elements, but I can't do gross stuff. I can't do gore. I'm not the most horror-esque person. So this book was sold to me as like a haunted house story, and I was like, haunted houses are an amazing setting. Let's look at this. Now, the book is very upfront. In the very, very beginning, or at least in the audiobook, in the very, very beginning, there are a list of trigger warnings. The author starts the book saying, I wrote about some disturbing things. Pay attention to this. Like, summary of the book also discusses that it's like gross out horror. So it's really detailed depictions of very disturbing imagery. So be very cautious if you decide to go into this book. And I enjoyed it so much. I loved it. I was so surprised how much I enjoyed this. I don't know if I would want to experiment with more gross out or extreme horror, but this book was just something I really, really enjoyed. I don't know what it was. So basically, this book is about two girls who survived a haunted house, and both of them remember being the victim of the other person's hate crime. The whole book, like the themes of the book, is about the liberal to alt-right pipeline, and how being gender critical, like being a liberal feminist, but being transphobic and turfy can, lead you to alt-right eugenics and whatnot. And there's also like the weird connection between trans fetishism, people who fetishize trans people, and like fascists, and how there's a big overlap between that. And it's so interesting and weird. And the book does a very good job of describing some very complex issues, but then also like, I don't know, I just really liked the way it was told, because it was very stream of consciousness, which I can go either way on that. Sometimes I love stream of consciousness, sometimes I hate it. But when it's like stream of consciousness in a panicked tone, I loved it, and I was very surprised that I loved it, because I don't normally tend to go to that extreme when it comes to horror. My new fave author, not a fave author like, oh my god, I will read every book this author ever comes out with, like I am with Courtney Summers. An author that I would like to look more into and probably would enjoy more would be T. Kingfisher. I read T. Kingfisher's paranormal horror novellas, the Sworn Soldier series, earlier this year, and I would like to read more of that. I think the second one came out this year, so the third one should be coming out next year, I think. I'll have to double check on that. Maybe that's my most anticipated release. We'll have to look at that. I realized that T. Kingfisher has quite a few other novels, and I'm interested in reading the rest of their work. The 8th question is newest fictional crush, which I don't know if I can call this a crush. I don't have really anyone that I've been like lusting over or like thinking about outside of my boyfriend. I love my boyfriend. But no, I don't really have a fictional crush. So I put Rowan, I think his last name is Damashi, something like that. Rowan from the Scythe series, just because I really enjoyed his character arc, and I thought his relationship to Citra was really cute, and I like that. I would also put Wendell from the Emily Wilde series, but he's not a new crush. I think as soon as I finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, he was my ultimate crush, my ultimate fictional crush. So he's not new, but He's always there. I am always thinking about Wendell, but only because he reminds me of my boyfriend, because they're both tall and blonde and funny and charming. Newest fave character I also had to think about for a really long time, because I don't know if there's anyone that I'm like really ride or die for, anyone that's really changed my like perspective of life. I've read a lot of literary novels, which, yes, character discussions and like introspectiveness are a big part of literary novels, but they're not like a favorite character that you root for or that you like you want to be or be with. So I put down Alex Easton from the Sworn Soldier series, just because I really like how Alex narrates the story, and I like the whole Galatia thing of the Sworn Soldier universe, and I think that's just a very fun character, and I do like Alex as a person. A book that made you cry, I had to think about it for a really long time, because I haven't had very much emotional attachment to a lot of the books that I've read this year. And like, yes, Thunderhead and the Toll made me cry a little bit. When I think about like that book, do I think about crying? For example, The White Chrysanthemum, I've talked about this in another video. When I think about that book, I think about how it made me sob. Recently, I had a whole like emotional breakdown over Animorphs, because I was like sobbing and like choking on my tears over Animorphs. Like, that makes me cry. But I couldn't think of a book that had made me cry that hard before. So I'm going to go with Hollow Kingdom, just to kind of show off that I've read Hollow Kingdom. This is basically the zombie apocalypse from the animal's perspective. The main character is a domestic crow who's trying to save first the humans, like find a cure for like the illness that has overtaken the humans, but then also uses his like knowledge of human behavior and what he's learned about the sickness to rescue the domestic animals that have been trapped in houses. So like people's pets, their dogs, their birds, their cats and things like that. And it's really cute, and it's wonderfully narrated, and it's a little bit sad at certain points, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I did cry at that book. So it didn't make me violently sob, but it made me cry, and not at the appropriate moment. It was like the chapter after the sad moment where they're just like reflecting on the sad moment. That made me cry, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I fear I already have. Okay. A book that made me happy. Again, I haven't been super emotionally invested in many of the books that I've read. So the book that made me happiest was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I have been an avid fan of the Stardust movie since I watched it for the first time. It has been in my childhood home. I've made my boyfriend watch it. I've made as many friends as I can watch it. Stardust is such a good movie, and I did not know for the longest time that it was based off of a book, let alone a Neil Gaiman book. So when I found that out, I had to read the book. So I read the book. The movie is such a good, faithful adaptation of the book. I mean, it does change quite a few things, but it is essentially the same story. So I was really happy to find out that the movie was pretty much true to form. It's just a cute, happy little fairy tale book. Like, I couldn't stop smiling throughout the whole thing. There's so many sections. Tristan makes me happy. Yvain makes me happy. Finding out Victoria is not just a snooty bitch made me happy. Seeing the witch get her comeuppance made me happy. I love that story so much, so it was great to read it and see it in another form of media. And that goes into the next question, that is, what is the best book to movie adaptation? And literally none of the books that I've read this year I think have ever had any book to movie adaptations, or if they do, I haven't watched it. So the only book I could put here was Stardust, which is a little bit of a cop-out because I just spent all that time talking about the book and the movie, but that's true. I think it takes the book and boils it down to its essential plot points and then adds a little bit of movie flair. For example, the fight at the end of the movie where the witch is, puppeteering some corpses and Tristan has to learn how to sword fight and whatnot. That is all gone from the book. That was never part of the book, but I think it makes it a bit more energetic in the movie. Obviously, you don't really want an ending where Tristan is just like, actually, I don't want to marry you, and everyone is happy, and the witch just decides that she doesn't want the star's heart, I guess. which is how the book ends. Obviously, there are a couple things I wish they had kept in the movie. For example, when I first showed the movie to my boyfriend, he ruined the ending for me when he said, "Oh wow, isn't it great that this guy who knows nothing about this country is just now the king? He's just the king and he doesn't understand the political world that he has entered into." And I was like, fuck you, it's a fairy tale, it doesn't need to make sense, okay, it's fine. And in the book, that's explained. So I wish they had kept at least a little bit of that explanation in the movie. So question 13 is your favorite post that you've made this year. I would have to say, as I've started making book content, my favorite post would definitely be the Alice Complex video that I posted, where most of you found my channel and started following. That somehow blew up. I remember when I first posted that, it got like 11 views initially. Like after a day, it was 11 views. And I was like, oh, I guess this video flopped, because my average viewing was like 20 to 30 views. And then I had a couple videos that had like 100 views or 200 views. And I was like, oh, I guess the video flopped. And then all of a sudden it had like 900, 1,000, almost 2,000 views now. And that was really fun to see, like a video getting some traction and getting, you know, comments and people actually watching not just what I have to say, but having their own thoughts and posting about it. So it was really interesting to see like a little miniature blow up. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the next, you know, Reads with Rachel or anything, but I do think it was fun to see my content get some eyes on it. So that was very nice and I really liked that. Question 14 is the most beautiful book you've bought this year. I can't remember if I bought it this year. I think I actually bought it last year. After the Flood is the prettiest book I've ever seen. I really like blue, purple, and pink together. I think that color story is just always going to slap. And then anything with gold foil, any kind of gold foil books, any inlaid gold. I'm a gold girly. All of my jewelry is gold. And so After the Flood was just a gorgeous book cover. And unfortunately, the actual book sucks. So I kind of wish I hadn't read it, just so I could look at the cover and go, that's probably a beautiful book, and then never know the truth. And then the last question is, what books do you really need to read before the end of the year? And I'm going to say my entire physical TBR right here that you can't really see, but I'm not going to lower the camera because I don't want to. I've talked before on my channel about how I personally don't like having physical books on my shelf that I have not read. I have seen all of those, you know, TikTokers with the huge shelves of books, and they have like a physical TBR of like 300 or more, and they have so many books that they just are okay with not ever reading. Like they'll get to it eventually. I'm not that kind of person. I need to read as many of the books that I own first. Unfortunately, with the invent of Libby and my use of it, I have now started listening to audiobooks and reading ebooks, which is great for my wallet because I'm not buying a bunch of books that I might or might not enjoy. I now spend all of my time looking for books on Libby that I can listen to while doing chores or while at work or whatnot, and not reading my physical TBR, which means that I have a bunch of books that I have not read, and it makes me viscerally uncomfortable to not read them. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think it's because my parents were hoarders, but anyway. Out of this stack, only a few of them I've had for more than probably 6 months. I feel like anything from last year that I haven't read, except for a few that I've been like really meaning to read and just haven't gotten around to it, I've gotten rid of. So the ones that I've had for the longest would probably be like The Firekeeper's Daughter, the one with the B on it, The Starless Sea, things that I've talked about in previous videos about how I definitely should read them, and I haven't yet. Everything else is more of a recent addition, actually very recent, because I just went on a book buying spree. And I think I need to ban myself from buying books for the rest of the year. And I've talked before about how reading challenges suck for me. They're great for other people. I can't stick to them. It gives me too much pressure. I feel gross about reading them, and then I eventually just quit and give up. But I am not making this a reading challenge. I am making a promise that I will make a dent in this stack of books by the end of the year. And hopefully I won't have that many new physical books that I've bought, because I'm going to be better about spending my money. That was the mid-year freakout tag. Thank you for listening in on my ramblings. This was not scripted. I just literally answered some questions and I didn't know what I was going to say or not. So this is going to be really difficult to edit. But I think I'm going to go take a nap because I am sleepy and I don't know why. But I do have to read some books before I do that. So thank you for listening. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you wanted to watch more videos, subscribe, I guess. And I think that's it. Okay, bye! I'm so sleepy. I don't know why I'm so sleepy. I'm only about to fall asleep here.